All right. Are you building a business and you're thinking to yourself, have other people come in front of me? Now, this is probably a silly question that you're probably not actually asking yourself, because we all know that there have been people that have been doing this for, whether you've been doing it for 6 months or you've been doing it for 6 years. There's people that have been doing it less time than you. And actually, there's quite a few people that have been doing it longer than you. I'm super excited to have with me here today Gabe Cossio, who is going to be a friend of mine from, we're in a mastermind at Seller Summit. And Gabe is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all this stuff. And he's been doing this for quite a long time now. But I'll let Gabe go ahead and get into his story. So Gabe, thank you for being on Maximizing E-commerce.
I'm really happy to be here. It's a pleasure to join your show and to support the cause. Like I told you off air, I'm super proud of what you're doing. The content is very, it's very simple to consume and easy to use and easy to integrate. And yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
Well, thanks so much for that. I appreciate those kind words. So just for anyone listening or watching, tell us a little bit about your journey in e-commerce and what you've done so far.
Sure. So I guess I'm a bit of a unicorn, if you will. This is all I've ever done. I'm an 18-year e-commerce veteran. I started when I was 17. Most people get into this to get away from their 9-to-5, or they heard it from a friend and they give it a shot, or they sold something on eBay once and they had that garage sale to mentality, like switching it up and coming into the future and what e-commerce is. But this is, my full time. I've been doing it, like I said, since I was 17. I started with my first private label when I was that young. I was lucky enough to sell that to a friend of mine's father for $15K when I was extremely young. So I got a little bit of success there. And that springboarded me into, doing a lot more things. Since then, and during those 18 years, I've done plenty of other things besides e-commerce. I opened a restaurant with the funds that I made selling on eBay. My mother owns a chain of schools. I helped her grow that business, adding social media and managing employees and all of that, running summer camps and everything you can imagine that goes along with it. Yeah. So yeah, besides that, like I said, 18 years in the e-commerce space. I've sold on every marketplace you can imagine. I've sold every item you can imagine, from flipping things to the wholesale process, importing and exporting, from the Middle East, from the Asias, and then exporting out to the South Americas and Central America. So import and export and e-commerce in general, that's my scope.
Cool. So I'm kind of curious, when you got started, going back to those early days, most of us got into this because maybe we saw on YouTube or a podcast or we heard about someone. How did you even know to do this?
Great question. I haven't been asked in that form in quite a while, actually. So I'm a forward thinker. I'm big on ideas, and I'm a dreamer, really, when it comes down to it. It's probably not the nicest way to put it, but I come from a family of haters, if you will. And so when people tend to, tell you, oh, you can't do that, stick to what works, get a college degree, follow, what people normally do. I tend to buck the trend, and I want to, be unique and blaze my own path. And so I just started, I would go online at night as a kid, and I would look for how people were making money. I was very eager to learn, what people were doing and how the future was going to develop. And that's exactly what happened. I went on eBay and I started looking at, the unique listings and the unique items being sold and strategies that people were using, and how bundling items or selling 2 items together and for a discounted price would increase sales. And marketing and advertising strategies from the old world incorporated into the new world of what e-commerce was. And I'm talking 1999, 2000. So the internet was still a baby, and selling online was something that people did not put water in. But I did, and I was very eager to learn about it. And I knew that the space was such a baby and in such infancy that I knew that I could impact it. And so that's what I focused on. And 18 years later, here I stand in front of you.
Wow, that's crazy. So, we have a wealth of resources. Sometimes it's almost too much. It's like drinking from a fire hose. All the information is out there about how you can grow a business and stuff like that. So you're having to just kind of figure it out on your own. How did you even figure out how to private label something back then?
So I knew people had done it. My mother, before she got into the education side of things, she had done import and export. So as a kid, I grew up, at trade shows, the little kid under the table, while
Mm,
my mother was, doing business. And I would run around those trade shows, and I would see that people would look forward to coming to these trade shows to make connections and to
hmm.
network and to do deals over a 2 or 3 or 4 day span, and they would go back to their city, and work for another few months until the next trade show. Um, and so it was forward thinking again, that led me to kind of bridge the gap from the old mentality that it was wait a few months to get to a trade show and speak over the phone or via fax or whatever, um,
Right.
because none of this existed back then. And
Hmm.
so to kind of bridge that gap, I figured how could I streamline, and that's what I really focused on, streamlining the business and getting people to get transactions done faster, communication to happen in a better way. And that's really been one of my best skills, getting people to do things faster.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. So you've probably noticed along the way lots of changes. So changes that most of us in this world probably can't even relate to because e-commerce evolves relatively quickly. So now that you've seen all these changes over the last 18 years that you've been in the game, where are you seeing things are now and where do you think they're going?
So, like you said a second ago, the overflow of information, there's so much content out there, is actually a negative in
Mm,
today's e-commerce space. Um, you just There's so much to analyze and so much to digest that you get that analysis paralysis,
hmm.
and you really just end up doing nothing. And so, like Scott Volker says, take action. And how I
Yeah.
always tell people, jump, take the jump, jump off the edge of the bridge,
Hmm.
or off the edge of the mountain. You have to jump, and you'll see that once you jump and you dive in the water and you make your first couple sales, it gets addicting. I'm sure you can relate.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you're refreshing a web page or an app on your phone, you do it multiple times a day. It's all you think about. It's so easy to sell nowadays. There's so many marketplaces. It doesn't have to be complicated like Amazon or your own private site. On OfferUp, on Craigslist, you could sell anything all day long if you're driven enough to do so. And so the hustler mentality is really what it takes to succeed in e-commerce. If you want to grow and you want to make money for yourself and you don't want to work for the man, as they say,
Hmm.
you can definitely do it today more than ever. But yeah, going back, there's so much out there. I would really tell people to kind of grab a pen and pad and write down as much as they can and create themselves a plan of action.
Hmm.
um, I don't ever recommend that people pay for coaching. I think that between youtube.com or YouTube University, like I like to call it,
Hmm.
um, and then the communities that are out there today, via the Meetup app or through Facebook, you can really create a good vibe for yourself and talking to other sellers and the community. Yeah. So YouTube and the community is really all you need to succeed.
And I agree that a lot of it is just that kind of hustler mentality. And even if it's not like you're like shaking because you like, some people they're just like always seem on edge. You don't have to be that. You can be a little bit more low key, but always the way I look at it is always what is the motion I can do today that's going to further the business, that if I'm planting a seed today that it could help germinate, months or years down the road. And if I'm constantly doing these little things, it adds up over time. Um, so you mentioned, going to meetups and meeting people. So I agree. So like we met at Seller Summit in the mastermind, and whether it's Seller Summit or as many people listening to this probably know, I'm involved with Brand Accelerator Live, Scott Volker's event. Um, but regardless of where you go, I think it's important to meet with other people. So what have you found successful in finding other people that do
Yeah.
this sort
So
of stuff?
I spent 15 years doing this without talking to anybody. And it still hurts my heart to say it to this day.
Yeah.
It was a very lonely journey. And like
Yeah.
I said, coming from, having a lot of people kind of push you down and not believe in you has really been the chip on my shoulder to push me to do so well. Um, Being able to get up every day and know that I'm as successful as the amount of work that I put in that day, and then 7 days ahead of that, or 6 days ahead of that, and then 30 days, and how it snowballs.
Hmm.
Um, it's so again, those 15 years alone without talking to anybody, and then now the 3+ years since, I've noticed that the community aspect of things is essential to the growth. You can scale on your own, but if you don't have a background in building a company, or in retail, or in working in a legitimate 30-40 person company, you're really not going to be able to scale at the with momentum, and keep it going, and growing really how you should, in order to, a few years down the line, build a really successful company. And so again, the community aspect that comes from either Facebook or meetup groups, um, again, just essential. It's a huge part of it. If you can't talk to people that are doing what you're doing, that have failed before you, to save you those failures, um, the e-commerce community is full of great people. People here are not trying to screw you over. They're not really trying to steal your ideas. They just want to help, because they realize that they one hand washes the other. They help you, you help them. We're going to circle back, and we're going to see each other later down the journey. And the pie is big enough for everybody here to eat. That's one thing that I'm sure everyone can agree on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things that, like, whatever you do and whoever you surround yourself, kind of like the Jim Rohn quote, that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Whatever you average with is what becomes real to you. So, like, I use the example that when I was at Walt Disney World, all anyone ever did was leave their job to go somewhere else at Walt Disney World, because that was what was real to them. Or when I was in hotels, people would go from, the Gaylord Palms to the Hilton or the Marriott or whatever. And then when I was in insurance, everybody just moved around in insurance, because that's so real. Now, the hard part is, to your point, 15 years. I can't imagine that in this business where you didn't necessarily have anyone that was doing this. So, you know, in entrepreneurship, the way it is now wasn't really as accepted. There was that sense of like, oh, that's a scam, or people don't actually do that. That's just fake. That, like, you could actually make a living, doing something like this. So,
Yeah, sure. So just to kind
yeah,
of
go ahead,
off
jump
from
in.
there, I would tell you that when I was younger, a few of the girls that I dated would tell me, "Oh, you're an entrepreneur? That just means you're broke." And that was the mentality that a lot of people had. A solopreneur or an
Right.
entrepreneur just meant that you didn't know what you were doing with your life. Um, and in many cases, it's the truth. People, they when they have no direction and no one guiding them, no mentor, they tend to work at something really, really hard, or in a lazy way, for a short amount of time, and then jump to something else and jump to something else. And so they don't stick to one thing. I tell you from personal experience, it's very, very hard to stay stuck to something and put time in without getting reward. Again, I'll reference Scott. How many episodes did he record before he started to get some people to actually, follow him, and follow his journey, and support it? And so you have to put time into things. People are in such a hurry to get things done, and they want an immediate, some immediate gratification, and that's just not the way it works. Even in the fast-paced world of e-commerce, you have to put in the time. You have to, put in the work. Release the elbow grease, as I like to say.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, the results don't come. And what I'll tell people, that are listening is, in this industry, if you put in the work, you will not fail. There is so much to eat from.
Mhm.
All you have to do is really put your head down, be humble, and just realize that if you put the work in, you'll get it done.
Yeah, and I think that's so key, is that there's this balance you have to play between, um, keep making action, but it has to be some of the right actions. And you don't know right away what the right actions are, but you have to have faith in the process overall, that you're doing the right thing. So how do you balance knowing what is just chasing shiny objects and what is sticking to the right plan of action, but not just beating a dead horse?
Sure. So I get a lot of people that ask me, I want to get into the space of e-commerce. I want to leave my 9 to 5, or
Mhm.
I wanna pursue this as a side job or a side hustle, and then I want to eventually make it my full time. What should I do? The most popular question is what to sell, and I never answer that question actually. Um, but what I would tell listeners and just people in general wanting to get into the space is how I look at it is steps on a staircase, and so
Okay.
you need to start somewhere. I always recommend people do retail arbitrage to start out because
Uh-huh.
it's rather easy. It takes a low amount of funds. The items you flip them rather easily, and then you'll move on to the other models, which is actually a perfect transition from my notes here. Retail, retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, wholesale. Um, Drop shipping is dead. I wouldn't recommend it. It's
Right.
just a flawed model. But yeah, retail arbitrage, online arbitrage, wholesale, creating brick and mortar to e-commerce relationships, private label. Um, there's just so many models that you could pursue and just bring something different to the space that anybody can get started anywhere. I don't recommend people get started in private label because it has a high rate of failure if you don't know what you're doing. But it's what creates the most profit. So
Yeah, and a lot of it is you have to have that mental switch go off in your head that says, I've made at least $1. And I heard people talk about that for years because it was years I was just kind of listening to podcasts like Smart Passive Income or, you know, the Amazing Seller podcast. Although after I started listening to e-commerce related stuff, maybe it was just something about physical products had me like realizing like, oh wait, this is possible and I can see the path pretty easily. Um, so I would say I got it at that point. Now, for someone that like they're up and running and they're looking at this saying, okay, whether they're at $1,000 a month or $100,000 a month, what would you say are some things they could do to focus on growing it and making sure they're focusing on growth activities?
perfect question. One of my biggest sayings that I give people when they talk to me about this industry is the number one skill in e-commerce to me remains agility. If you
Mm-hmm.
can be agile and you can always keep a finger on the pulse of what's happening in this industry, you'll remain successful. And what I mean by that is, if you do retail arbitrage full time, always keep your eye on wholesale. Always keep your eye on private label. What does the market need? What does the market want? And what are the fads? What's happening around well, in seasonality? What's happening throughout the year? What could you bring to the market that will sell?
Mm-hmm.
People tend to want to jump into something and they make it their niche, and I don't agree. I have one of my private label brands. We only sell 4 times a year. It's a seasonal brand, and
Mm.
so we ramp up. We do our sales for those amount of weeks, and then we shut it down until the next season comes. And
Interesting.
it's very, very successful. It's a model that actually I don't see anybody else doing. We're lucky enough that it's been successful for us. Um, and so, yeah, you don't have to stick to one thing. You can take part in a lot of different things that are happening at once. If online arbitrage is your thing, and you don't like to be hands-on, just do a little RA every once in a while. Do one private label and take it slow and see how it goes. So
Mm-hmm.
just keep your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, no, one of the things I would say is that you're in a good spot to keep your finger on the pulse because one, you've been doing it for so long, but then really my point here is um, you're a part of a meetup in Miami that I actually got the chance to go to. And I could tell like everyone in the room is like really passionate about what they're doing and people with different types of business models and everyone seemed like genuinely interested in helping one another. And I think to your point, it's just the general culture of e-commerce is that once you get off of like Facebook groups, which I think are great, but when you get face to face, people are a lot more transparent about at least what they're doing, and they're genuinely want to help you because at the same time they want help in return, so it's a good reciprocal model. So like what are you hearing in that, because the Miami group, if I remember correctly, it's like the largest meetup group for Amazon sellers in the
Yeah,
country, am I right?
actually, 2 weeks ago we became the largest meetup group in the world. It has over 2,600 active members,
Oh wow.
uh, active via chat. That
Uh-huh.
actually come to the events. There's about 100 plus on a weekly basis. We meet 11 times a month.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those are networking events, just a social setting. But some of them are actual sit downs, and we do presentations. And we have, a lot of the companies in the industry come out and do a 2 hour presentation.
Mhm.
Before the presentation, we always do a 1 hour ask me anything for anybody in the industry that wants to bring up an issue from that week, whether it's a rookie in the industry or someone that's a veteran, whether they're selling on Amazon or they're doing garage sales,
Right.
Um, so it's anybody that really wants to get started in the industry, all the way up to anybody who's doing 7 figures.
Yeah,
There's
and I
a
remember talking to people that were doing pretty well
Yeah.
at it. So that gives you a good chance to get your finger on the pulse because I know you're very active in that group. Um, Tell me, what are the things you're hearing or are working and what's not working
Okay.
on Amazon, for example?
Sure. So Amazon is diversifying its portfolio of marketplaces.
Mhm.
As you noticed, they've grown out. They've built their marketplaces in Australia. The UK and Germany do amazing. Canada is on the nipping at their heels there, as you know.
Yeah.
Uh, Japan is growing. China recently shut down, but I hear that they're going to be coming back later on once they get a better hold of things over there. The Chinese have a stranglehold on what's happening in e-commerce over there. But Amazon, like they do in anything, they study it for an amount of time, and when they're ready, they get back in. Um, Dubai just launched. India is doing great. So those are marketplaces that I would definitely tell people to keep an eye on. Um, it's kind of easy to spread yourself thin and want
Mhm.
to do a lot of things. So if you are from any of those countries, or if you have family or a business relationship with any of those countries, then you're ahead of the game. And so I would tell you, pick one marketplace and kind of jump into that one, and work with Amazon. In those smaller marketplaces, they'll provide way better service to get you going, rather than on Amazon.com, where everybody's trying to get a piece of the pie. Um,
Yeah, Amazon definitely wants people to sell internationally, and I think that's a great way to get going.
mhm.
Um, to widen that net, so to speak. Now, which international marketplaces have you had, or the people you've talked to had the best of luck?
So again, Germany and the UK are the two biggest ones.
Mhm.
I guess it's more because of the infrastructure in those countries, and the buyers tend to the space is just growing in those countries and what e-commerce is, and they're very big countries. So obviously the size of the country doesn't matter, but the infrastructure and the logistics is really what it comes down to. And if they have those two things down packed, then the space will grow. And so Amazon has proven that.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer of starting in Canada just because it's close. But Canada, you still get 10-15% in sales. But to your point, Europe's bigger. Now, I tend to find the profit margins are a little less, but you don't take margins to the bank, you take dollars. So,
Mhm.
whatever you make in pounds or euros, you can eventually convert to dollars. And the nice thing is, like, these are customers you wouldn't get if you were just selling on Amazon.com. And to your point, their logistics are incredible there. Like, I was watching this webinar, and a guy who was like head of operations for a bunch of the warehouses and or fulfillment centers, as they call them, in the UK. It was talking about how if packed properly and everything is like done right, they have in some cases when the time a truck arrives, they can actually have the product to the customer within 4 hours.
Sure.
Like, that's
The logistics.
insane. That's
Yep.
insane. Like the truck arrived with your stuff to the warehouse. Like, sometimes it takes 4 days here in the U.S. just to get your stuff checked in. So
Two things that I'll definitely tell you. The marketplace and the people selling on those marketplaces, the amount of people sellers is actually way smaller.
yes,
So the amount of product that they're receiving is a
yep,
lot less, and so they're ready to take on a lot more. And since they don't have a lot more, they do really well with what they have, and they move it very quickly.
yes,
And so in those countries, the other marketplaces that have existed, they already have an idea of how things work. A lot of stuff gets moved around very, very quickly. And the U.S. is kind of late to the game in the whole getting stuff to you quickly, taking it directly to your
mm-hmm.
house. A lot of these countries, they do grocery to house delivery.
Mm-hmm.
They do replenishable office supplies daily. And so, like I said, we're kind of late to that game, but we've blown the lid right off of it. And
Right.
so we're taking it by storm.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's crazy when you get into these other countries, like you realize like there's people all over the world that buy stuff. And like if you're selling coffee cups, just because you happen to pick one up there, um, somebody could buy your coffee cup and it's amazing. Someone and the other side of the world literally could be, drinking out of a coffee cup that you made, or that you had manufactured. Um,
I
what
think
else?
less and less
I'm sorry.
that less and less today people care about the actual product and more about the branding. And so in a lot of these countries, people go goo goo gaga over an American product, because they think quality
Right.
and they think America, one of the greatest nations in the world. And so branding and marketing the product is essential to getting it sold on another platform besides .com. And so, yeah, you can sell anything from the U.S. anywhere around the world, and in turn, you could also, on the flip side, you can grab something from another country and sell it here because
Mhm.
we're a melting pot. People come from all around the world to live in the greatest country in the world, and so there's a lot of stuff that they want to get from back home that they can't. And so, just a little secret, pro tip: sell something from another country in the U.S. and I guarantee you it will sell because
Mhm.
people there's a demand for it. And so that's personally what I do in my business. I do sell some stuff from outside for the immigrants that come to this country, and they want and once they settle down here and they spend 15, 20 years and they build a family and a business here, they still want to consume products from back home, whether it's a bath soap, whether it's a candy
Mhm.
bar, whether it's an aroma, whatever it is. They want some nostalgia from back home because it reminds them of their childhood or their family. And so you can definitely make money on that.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I was I don't know how like sometimes if you go on YouTube, it takes you down these rabbit holes and like 5 videos in, you're like, I don't even know how I got here. And I was
Yeah.
watching this video one time about New Zealand and the differences in culture between New Zealand and here. They're both, English speaking, former British colony countries. Um, and it was like they're showing, like, to your point, candy bars, and it was like the candy bars were so different. And I think somebody was an American that was in the video talking about they really wanted to get something, I forget which candy bar it was, and people look for that kind of stuff. So if it's the right product or whatever it is, people that come from one country to another, they want that sense of comfort. So that, yeah, that's a good point of, you could arbitrage something from another country and people would eat it up, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Um, so what else are you seeing is working, from having your finger on the pulse of the networking group?
Private label is changing. I will tell
Mhm.
you there's a lot of white labeling or brown labeling, however people refer to it nowadays. You can test a product and then ramp it up and build a brand easily. You can do it by yourself. There's no team behind it that you need. You could do it, spare room in your house or in your garage. It's very easy to get 1,000 units landed here in the U.S. And then ship them off to Amazon and see what happens. And so I think private label is becoming mainstream. Really, people love getting resources like AliExpress and ordering 5, 10 units and trying them out. Ordering 500. It doesn't break the bank to do these things anymore. And
Yeah.
so, you connect with Alibaba and you bring that product to market on Amazon. And the velocity that Amazon allows is just, it's a no brainer, really, if you want to get out of, the 9 to 5, as I say. You could really build a brand with just a few products in a few short months, as long as you have an idea of what's selling. You can grab a few tools and see, you can rank things via these tools on Amazon, create yourself a little playbook of what sells. And yeah, like I said, in a few months, you could have a brand and you could be doing, gosh, no joke, you could be doing easily 10, 15K in sales a month, so.
Yeah, definitely. Now, for your business, we were talking offline that you used to have employees and now you've gone to all virtual assistants. So you've done both sides of that spectrum. So for someone listening who has that build, they're building that business, maybe let's say they're up to $10,000 a month in sales and they're just trying to figure out, like, how do I scale it? Because this is a problem I ran into when I was working full time and then also building this business. It was like coming to a ceiling of like, if I make this my 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. or 1 a.m. job, at a certain point, there's only so many hours that I can't cut into my time at work, and I still have a family. So what would you recommend to someone who's, now at that point, they got to start building a team?
Sure. So the team aspect of things has been by far the hardest thing in my 18-year process.
Mm.
So people ask me, if you could go back, what would you have changed? And I tell them I would have looked towards people succeeding in this industry a lot sooner and not have been so hard-headed and thought that I knew exactly what I was doing all the time. And I would have tried to build a team a lot earlier. And you have to be able to, you can't micromanage as much. In this industry, actually, you can micromanage a lot more than in others. But you have to be able to delegate, and you have to look to others to do jobs, even if it's for a short amount of time, to kind of not only release the stress that it takes to do all things, but to kind of take that off of your plate so that you can focus on something bigger, on something better for the company. Because in the end, if you're not looking at this as a business, as a company, if you think it's something that you're building fly by night, you're going to fail. And it's very hard to fail in this industry. You can get a product, and if it doesn't sell, you could, just get rid of it, liquidate it for cost. So
Right.
There's very, very little risk in this industry. Everything sells pretty much, So again, you could just flip it and get rid of it for what you paid for it, and kind of go in another direction in e-commerce. So as far as team building, yes, I had a bunch of employees. They're no longer here. None of those bridges were burned. Some have become friends, and we still talk to this day. And maybe in the future they come back into the equation. But for now, I've figured out that I need to remain agile, as I say, and I need to be able to move around. And so being able to travel and not have to worry about what's happening back home in the company, making sure that everything stays oiled here so the cogs can continue to turn. And just working with VAs has allowed me to do way more. The virtual assistants that I've trained are very good at what they do. Don't get me wrong, it took a lot of time to train them into doing what they do at a good pace. But yeah, if you could train a few VAs to help you, you can be a digital nomad. You really don't need to have a space that you stick to. You don't need to have a warehouse. People think that the only two ways to do it is either fulfilled by merchant and having your own warehouse where you pack things and send them to the customer, or FBA. You send the items to Amazon, and Amazon fulfills the orders for you. And that's no longer the case. More and more, we're seeing fulfillment centers pop up everywhere. I'm sure anybody in the industry has noticed that FedEx is jumping into fulfillment. Shopify is trying to do something, and there's many other companies that are trying to fill that middle gap on what fulfillment is. And so you have prep centers and fulfillment centers popping up not only in the US, but all around the world. And they want to facilitate the transaction for you for a nominal number. And it's extremely worth it. You don't have to put your hands on the product and pack up these boxes, build these pallets, and send them over to Amazon. These people will house the product for you, sometimes extremely, extremely cheap. Even refrigerator product and product that has a very short lifespan. Gosh, I know someone that sells bugs on Amazon.
Right.
Imagine that you could sell bugs on Amazon.
Right.
So yeah, there's people that do everything that you need nowadays. As long as you get out there and you ask the right questions, you'll get the answers that you want.
So if someone was looking at their task list, because I think we all have this like Superman complex and think I'm the only one that can do it. And one time it was another mastermind I was in where someone said, and this stuck with me, if they mess it up, is it going to tank your business? And in most cases, the answer is actually no. We kind of indulge ourselves in thinking how important we are to be the one to put the label on, whereas worst case scenario, if they put the wrong label, there's ways to figure it out. So how would you recommend to someone if they're like looking at their task list and trying to figure out what are the first things I should offload? Because I can't just offload everything. To your point, it takes time to build. So what would be the first things you would recommend someone do to offload?
It depends how important the research is to what you're doing. But initial research is definitely something you can offload. I need to find out about 5 tools that I could use to do my accounting. I need to
Mm-hmm.
find out about 5 tools to do inventory management, to do bulk uploads into various marketplaces.
Mm-hmm.
I need an all-in-one tool. I need one tool that I can pay a monthly service fee and does a lot of things for me. I need to find tools that help me do keyword research. And tools really aren't the only way to do it. The actual VAs can do research for you and do
Mm-hmm.
keyword research in certain fields. Um, they can build you lists of wholesalers. I recommend that you contact the wholesalers yourself, not have a VA do it, unless it's someone here in the US that has experience with cold calling and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But those are some that I would definitely start with. People are afraid to pass on very, very important tasks to their VAs. Listen, if you're willing to train the VA and have that person, on a chat with you and see what you're actually doing for a few days, that's enough training. 2, 3 days of watching you do the tasks for an hour or two a day, that's pretty good. They'll have an idea, and then you send them out on their own and you let them do it 2 or 3 times over the next 2 or 3 days. And you sit down with them again and you tell them, okay, good job. You took a little too long to do this. Look, here's a shortcut to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
so the training is ongoing, and people will be surprised within a week or 2 weeks that person is trained to do the task that you gave them.
Yeah, and there's so many good tools out there like Loom. I don't know if a lot of people have heard of this. Loom. It's free, and literally you just hit a button on your. It's a Chrome extension, and it records. Doesn't even just have to be what's in Chrome. It could be anything in your screen, your entire desktop or whatever. So you can show them step by step what you're doing, and tell them to document it or something. So there's all kinds of different ways you can do it. So that way, you do it once, you're showing them, and then they can replicate it. Then you can go back and just check. So,
When I first started to train VAs, you know what I would do? I worked on a PC,
mhm,
and I work on both today. But on a PC, whenever you get to a screen that you think is important, hit the print screen button, hit
mm,
print screen, and it takes a snapshot of what you're doing,
mhm,
and you save those, and you send them all those slides, and
mhm.
they go through it step by step. And it's if you create walls, then you're in between those walls. And if you knock down those walls and you never put up those mental barriers, then you're going to get anything you want done. And so
I
I'm a
like how
big
you
fan
frame
of that.
it.
Yeah.
You
As long as
create
you,
walls, you're going to be between those walls. I
yeah,
might have to use that again sometime.
yeah.
But
And
you can knock them down, and you're the one in charge. We're all the ones
definitely.
in charge of creating and knocking down our own mental barriers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, my question is going to be next is where do you find virtual assistants?
Oh gosh, there's a plethora of websites now that you can find them. I would
If you're
tell you
just starting
probably,
out
yeah.
with
So I'll give you
VAs.
two resources.
Okay.
Probably the simplest one for you to get started. The most popular VAs come from the Philippines. That's what
Hmm.
the first thing people think of. And so onlinejobs.ph is the first one that I would tell you.
Hmm.
It's very, very simple to get started. They're very good with English. You pay a very small fee to get access to the VAs, and then you do everything with the VA on your own. They just facilitate the introduction.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's for basic level, just getting started in the VA space.
Hmm.
And then if you're going over and you want to do something more advanced, we have a mutual friend, Nathan Hirsch, over at FreeUp. So free plug for him there. If you want something a little bit more, someone that can do a lot, more diverse tasks, and someone that has more experience, they source VAs from all over the world, including here in the U.S.
Hmm.
And there's people on there, and on every VA service, there's people that are going to be smarter than you. That's just the way it is. Some of these people, have PhDs, and they go on there because in their country they just can't make enough money doing what their day job is, and so then they have a side hustle, and that ends up being freelancing virtual assistants. So again, online jobs PH
Hmm.
and freedom. That's kind of the scale right there.
Yeah, I think that's two great places to start. So, online PH is, great for like if you're looking for a full timer. And Mike Jackness, I was on his podcast about a year ago, and he challenged me to just hire someone. And I was like, well, I don't know if I can afford someone or find enough for them to do. And she's still with me a year later, and sends me notes of gratitude for the job because you know what I'm paying her is actually about a 40-50% raise in what she was getting before. And it's one of those things, like if I don't fill her up with 40 hours worth of time, which is somewhat arbitrary, she's still worth it to me for the amount of stuff she does. And, if you need someone who, maybe is more an expert in a subject matter, free up with 3 E's and free, they do a good job of screening it. So yeah, those are both two great places to go. Now, going back to your talk about mindset, and we create the walls, or we can tear down the walls. How do you keep your mindset going? Because it's got to be hard to stay engaged, especially 18 years into this.
Sure. So I would tell you that's one of my greatest skills, and creating that mindset and sticking to it. And that's really what I try and convey onto people that want to leave their job, or that have been hit with something and they really can't progress to the next thing in e-commerce. They felt like they ran into that wall or hit that glass ceiling where they know that there's much more to do, but they just can't break that barrier. Again, I'll go back to the community. Sticking with people around you that are still succeeding to this day, or people that have failed and they've gotten through it, and they've found that there's more to it than just that failure, and then pivoting into something else. Reading books, going on YouTube, listening to motivational, you jump on there and listen to Joe Rogan talk for 5 minutes. He's going to motivate you. David Goggins, he's going to motivate you. Tony Robbins, a lot of these characters, through YouTube, they'll never meet you and you'll never meet them. But just through YouTube and a short video or a podcast or whatever it may be, they might say the right words to reframe your mind and to keep you going for another week, another month. And then the breakthrough might occur. And that's really all you need. You need to believe in yourself. It's cliche-ish. Our parents tell us as a kid, believe in yourself, to get on the bike and ride it. You're going to fall and you're going to scrape your knees, but you're going to be okay. And that is really the best way I can frame it for you. Get on the bike and ride the bike, and you're going to fall on your butt, on your behind, but you're going to get up and you're going to do it again, and you're going to do it better, and you're going to take less risks or bigger risks, and you might get a bigger reward. So,
yeah, and that's a great point, because when you have a full-time job, you have someone, your boss or your boss's boss, or just the company, the system, whatever, that tells you need to get on the bike because that's your job, and you need to be down the street by 3:00 or whatever it is. And if you don't do that, eventually you'll get fired. Whereas in entrepreneurship, if you don't do these things, nothing really happens,
Yeah.
So, and nothing happens can actually be terrible, So, I think you're definitely on the right, or I'm definitely in agreement with you. You're definitely right when it comes to, feeding your mind. So, you mentioned books. Are there any books that you're currently listening to or have found to be like, oh, that's definitely what I want to make sure everyone knows about?
Yeah. So a lot of people struggle with cash flow and money management. And so what I would tell you is there's a great series out there called HBR, the Harvard Business Review. They offer these monotone colored books. There's no picture of somebody in the front. It's just a title, and it says HBR. And if HBR, Harvard Business Review, is not enough to get you to read the book,
Right.
you probably don't know what it is. But that series of books and the other series that they offer are great short reads. I tend to bring them on every single one of my airplane rides. And so I'll sleep for a little while and I'll read those books, and it reframes me all the time for me to know that I don't need a big corporation. I don't need 40 employees, a CEO, a COO around me. I can do it my damn self, for lack of a better term. And yeah, so just read, get out there and just do your own studies. And everybody learns differently. Going back to the bike analogy, some people need to ride a bike and go in a straight line to learn how to ride a bike. Some people need to ride a bike and go in a circle, because the hardest part for them is the turning and the braking and the balance. And so we all learn differently. For me, I'm a visual learner. Behind me here, you see that I have whiteboards that are all around this meeting room. And I throw up everything on these whiteboards and I erase them at the end of the day. I take pictures of the stuff that I write down and I send that I draw here, and I send it to my VAs. And so visual learning and actually writing the stuff out is my old school mentality on things, but it works for me. And so whether you need to ride the bike and go in a straight line, or you need to ride the bike and go and swerve and take turns, and that's how you learn. The point is that you have to figure out how to ride the bike, and you can do that in this industry in many different ways. It doesn't take, it's not a one stop for everybody. You know, everybody,
Mhm.
again, doesn't learn the same. And so again, in this industry, you can figure it out one way or another. You just have to try different things.
Awesome. Well, do you have any closing advice here for anyone listening who's, they're building and they're just, whether they just need a little encouragement or, a little vision? What closing thoughts do you have?
Sure. So I'm big on motivation. Again, I carry certain chips on my shoulder, and I feel like a lot of people tend to look to this industry and want to get started in it because they lack something in their life, or they're sad or beat down, or there's just something missing, and so they want to fulfill their creativity in one way or another. And what I'll tell those people and those listeners is that if you're looking for something, if you're searching for something to fulfill that void, you found it. This really is it. There's is as low a risk industry as I could, talk to you about. Um, you just got to put the work in. That's as simple as it comes down to. Where you can go to a store right now and buy a bunch of stuff and flip it online. And if flip is not the term that you want to use, you could build a business in a short
Mhm.
amount of time. And the industry allows that. The world is moving away from big corporations and all of the stuff that comes, all of the red tape that comes with that, with those big corporations. And so smaller businesses are growing, and they're growing at a huge pace, and they're what the future really is. And networking and getting those small businesses together is what's going to carry us into the next era. So again, if you're looking for something, this is it. You could make a whole lot of money here as long as you're willing to put in the work. And who better to work for than for yourself
Yeah.
and for your family, So
Yeah, that's a great point about, just the way the world is changing. Cause, we were talking about offline that, you could go through McDonald's and you don't even have to talk to anyone anymore, that, you just put on the app, and more people are looking for things just being done for them. And e-commerce is a way that things are being done for them. So they don't, there was like, when we grew up, you wanted to buy something, you would spend 30 minutes going to the mall, 10 minutes looking for a parking space, walking halfway across the parking lot to go find, the entrance, and then you spend 5 minutes walking within the mall to get to the store, and it's like this big production. And now you just go on your phone, search for whatever you're looking for, click a button, and it's there in 2 days. And that's why malls are closing across America. You look on the news and you constantly see Sears is closing stores, Macy's is closing stores, Payless is gone. All these legacy companies are gone. So people are still buying things. It's not like people aren't buying things. So it's, the world is changing and shifting. And the way I like to look at it is, one day I'm going to meet my grandkids, and am I going to tell them, your grandfather built this business, or am I going to say, I just thought it was too hard, so I stayed on the sidelines? So that's one way I like to think of it. So if you provided a lot of wonderful information here today, Gabe, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
so the best way to contact me is through my Instagram account. It's rather new school, but you can contact me on Instagram. My account name is at Paid by Amazon. Very simple to remember, Paid by Amazon. And yeah, shoot me a DM, or you can send me an email through there, and we could talk, and I could help you along your journey. I'm not a coach. I'm not a guru. I'm not for hire. I'm just, a person who has fallen hard on hard times, has failed, and has succeeded. I succeeded once, I succeeded twice. And so, I'm willing to help people and just further the journey and see where life takes us.
Awesome. Awesome. I'll make sure to link to that in the show notes, as well as if anyone's watching this on YouTube. If for those watching on YouTube, it'll be in the description below. So awesome. Thank you so much, Gabe, for being here today and sharing all your wealth of knowledge.
Sure, man. I hope to see you in September at Brand Accelerator.
All right. We'll definitely see each other at Brand Accelerator. Cool, man.
Take care,
Thanks.
bro.